Okay, so I thought I was here recording for the last hour. So I've got a 22-minute segment of a recording that should have been an hour long of showing off me working on this hook object. I might upload that 22-minute segment, but yeah, one of my hotkeys activated and killed off the recording, so we lost most of what I was working on, but I've been working on the grappling hook. I got the entity render set up so we actually can render and visually see the hook. It cut off slightly before I finished this part right here, where I was getting the rotation set up for the hook, and it lost almost all the me talking about redoing the hook classes and stuff here. Luckily, we can just continue where I'm at, and I'll try to talk through what I missed and show off what I'm at currently, so you guys don't feel left behind. So go ahead and get this loaded up. Yeah, like none of these videos are scripted, so I actually don't even know what I covered to start with. But we'll go ahead and get this all guessed out here. If Minecraft will cooperate. There you go, Minecraft. Okay, so the thing I was working on is I was working on getting this to work. So it renders in the correct side for each one of these. If, there we go. Well, it's supposed to be rendering. Yeah, the ray tracing is a little funky. So for some reason, it's not wanting to do what it's supposed to be doing. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we're rendering that side, rendering that side, rendering that side, rendering there, and rendering there. That's the code I basically worked on, just so it'll show where it's rendering. I also corrected that the hook was not rendering where it was supposed to be. As many people saw in some of my old videos that I recorded of me working on this, that the hook was rendering almost a block above. It is now resetting its position. It's still a little glitchy. There's some weird behavior that, for some reason, entities on the client like to push out of blocks. I thought I overrode the correct methods. It's slightly improved, but at the same time, it's not quite working. I'll work on it some more here as we go. But the part I've been working on, for which is the part I lost, because after all, what I did end up recording was me working on, if I can get back to the code, it cut off right before this part, but the part is now the rope issue. So I fixed the rope. The rope now renders completely perfect, although it's in the middle of my head for some reason. What was causing that is if I go to the rope class, is right down, I believe in here, if I can hit Control-Z a couple times, I had this in here. This was meant to be debug code so I can make sure that things were working. This completely screwed up the actual render count. So it was unsure of what it was supposed to be doing. But that fixed it. I switched the rope over to, I've got a new rope render object now here. This one, instead of keeping track of the position of the player, so the X, Y, and Z of the player, it actually stores the player object itself, although I'm storing it as an entity because I plan to reuse this code here later for non-player based grappling hooks. But it stores the target. This actually provides a much smoother render. It's still a little flaky because, I mean, you don't always get something perfect, especially when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. But overall, it looks okay. I mean, most people probably aren't going to overly notice. The ones that do are going to probably not care that much. The rope is almost perfectly rendering where the grappling hook is. I just have to do a couple more adjustments on the rendering position. I think what I need to do is actually, on the render itself, which I need to get rid of this debug line too. I completely forgot I still had that in there. I translate this up by 2. I'm actually going to drop it back down. And that should fix it. Yep, there we go. Perfectly rendered now. And that should work on all sides. So if I clear the hook and I cook this, yep, it's working. We get that little dark render because I need to fix the lighting issue with the renders. That'll be something I'll polish over the next week. But because it's functional now, we can actually use it. That's pretty much it. Last thing I need to do is fix the positioning of the rope, and it's good to go. And I'll leave this as a separate video, I'll upload the first one. I'll leave a mark at the end of it, like saying like, hey, the video got cut off accidentally. And then we'll move on here. So inside here is where it actually is supposed to be rendering the player position. So it actually is in the rope class. Let me open that back up. And I need to just put a negative 0.8 here. I need to remember to add an override here. So to do add method to get height offset. Because after all, as I said, I want to recycle this for other things. I may make skeletons actually spawn with grappling hooks and actually be able to pull you off. That will be a separate mod. It will not be part of this one, but it will use the same code. That'll come here later. So that's in there, and if I reload this, that should fix it. The theory is it should fix it. There's a difference between theoretical and practical. There we go. That's rendered for my belt now. I'm still considering whether or not I want to put a belt object around the player or a harness or something to actually show this, because as some people have noted, this doesn't look quite appropriate. Although I am above the belt line, so I mean, people need to get their minds out of the gutter. I may move it up to chest level. You know, actually, we can do that like right now. We can do this real quick. So you can move this to chest level, and this will render just a little bit better, and people can stop making dirty jokes. There we go, chest level. And then I can put like some kind of harness on the player, some kind of render that says like, yeah, I've got a grappling hook in my inventory, and that's the reason why I have a rope coming out of my chest. But everything works, and just to remove some debug code, so we do have debug code in a couple spots. So in client here, yeah, right here's the debug code. I can now get rid of this, and everything should be good to go. And it's just at this point, it's just some adjustments on ray tracing, so that way we're not colliding with grass here, because if I grappling hook like this, well, it didn't happen that time, but very likely to shoot the grass. And the reality of it is I need to probably write my own ray tracing handler to ignore grass and stuff, and ignore potentially air blocks from things like railcraft. Do a few other things. Entity support needs to be implemented still. So if we actually go and there's a cow there. So if we tried to grappling hook a cow, it just wouldn't work. We would go through the cow and to the other side. The ideal is that the default hook, so the one we're using right now, will allow you to pull neutral monsters or neutral creatures, so like cows and stuff. And then there'll be another version which will have a spike on the end of it, which will let you pull hostile mobs and other players. The spike will do damage. There will be a config to disable and enable that, and there'll be a few other things. One thing I actually need to do, I need to kill this key handler here. So this code needs to go bye-bye, and then we'll reload that real quick. But yeah, everything will be configurable in the end. That's one of the things I actually got to work on. I can actually show this off real quick. So I've already got the settings listed here. The maximum distance by which you can grapple. The lifetime, which is not implemented currently, but will be. This will be how long a grappling hook can last before it breaks. And the percentage by which you can pull in. So this adjusts the speed of the grappling hook. And the way to implement this is actually pretty simplistic. So we go configuration, config equals event dot get mod actually. Let's go grab one of my other mods real quick, because I know I have a special way I like to do the config directory. Okay, Helm Bucket doesn't have a config. No More Rain doesn't have a config. Wooden Buckets does. One thing I like to note, I did do this. I didn't do this on recording. I completely rewrote Wooden Buckets. There is now a thing called fluid handling. This actually has the bucket code in it. This will now be a dependency for any of our bucket mods that we make. Wooden Buckets is now pretty much turned into recipes and configs. And what it does is it registers material with a fluid handler, and the fluid handler then makes a bucket with that material. The bucket in the fluid handler class can support 32,000 materials, which is the reason we're using it. It's now one item we now have to manage across multiple mods. And it's a little bit more work, and it'll be published here probably, I want to say next week, because we're going to get the scripts done Sunday, but I won't have time Sunday to work on it. But here's the configs, and yeah, here's what I was talking about. I have a special way to handle these. I like to put all of the config files for the organization in a BBM folder. That way, anybody who's actually trying to use our mods, they can go, okay, this is a BBM mod, therefore the configuration directory should be in that spot. And it looks like we imported the wrong thing here, so let's go ahead and get rid of that, because for some reason it thought we wanted logger4j. And clear that out. We can now back that down. To do a configuration, all you got to do is configuration.load, configuration.save, and in between the load and save brackets, you do your configs. And of course, this needs to be changed to grappling hook. We'll capitalize that just to be consistent. And in here, we'll go hook reach distance. Which, by the way, in the configuration here, normally you do uppercase for final stuff. In this context, I'm trying to say that this is meant to be a final object. You're not supposed to change it, even though there is no final actually implemented there. I actually could use reflection instead of the final, so that if somebody else tried to change it after I was done loading configuration, it would error out on them, but I'm not going to do that. But, so configuration dot, let's say this is a int, so we're going to get int. We need to provide our name, so this would be reach distance. And then we just need to fill in the rest of the information. So the rest of the information is another string, an int, an int, and a string. So this is most likely category, value, min, max, and then information for it. If I actually put that up, default value, min, max. Okay. So category is going to be configuration.category general because we don't have anything else. The default is going to be just hook distance, so it's going to be what is currently in there, which is 100. And then the minimum value, we're going to say it's 10, and then we're going to say the maximum value is, I want to say 1200, because the reality of it is there is a limit to by which we can probably make this work, and I'm actually going to probably drop this down to 300. Because if I try to grapple farther than the distance by which the player can render, it's probably going to cause issues, even though it's not really going to do anything. Max distance. There we go. There's a config file, and then we just duplicate this over again. And we just change each one of these lines. So this will be hook life time. And we'll set this to hook lifetime, and of course we got to change the details about it. So -1 is the bottom here, and then we'll say, we'll just set to 90,000. And this will be time in ticks that the hook can be activated for. 1 tick equals, or we'll do this, 20 ticks equals 1 second. Just some extra details there. Most people probably won't understand the 50 milliseconds thing, but they'll understand that 20 ticks equals 1 second. And then this will be called life timer. And then the last one we want to do is actually a float, so we're going to go get float. And this one is hook pull. And then the default for this one is 0, or 0 is the lowest you can go, and I'm trying to think of like how fast to the highest. We'll say 400%, and then we're going to have to put a limit on the speed. Yeah, even if they set it to 0, it actually will limit it. And we'll just call that speed because really there's no real reason to call it anything else. But what this will do is when this loads up, it'll load, it'll try to load an existing config file. If it can't find one, then it'll go ahead and move on, and we'll go and load each one of these and we'll be like, nah, there's nothing there. But it'll set the default value, so when it hits save, it'll save a new file to the disk. That's how that pretty much works. Really simple how config files work. Quite a few mod developers don't understand them. There's not a lot of complexity to it. It legitly has not really changed by much since the beginning of Minecraft. Early days of Minecraft, we used flat files, so there wasn't a pre-default config system because configuration system was added by Forge. This actually is a Minecraft Forge class. When they added it, it did simplify life. Before that, you just wrote your own files, but writing files in Minecraft, or writing files in Java is not hard because it's literally just like file equals new file, and then you would get a file writer, and you go like, okay, read and write file. And then when you read the file, you'll load your settings, and then when you write the file, you'll save your settings. That's pretty much it. So that's that. There's our packet handler. We do need a recipe. We can do this real quick. So game registry.add shaped recipe. Yeah, let's do add recipe, and then we'll do new shaped or recipe. And then we'll do, really don't need to pass anything major, so we could just do item hook here, I believe. And then we want to do our recipe object. So let's think what to do first. I've been suggested to use iron bars for the hook claws, so I'm probably going to do that. But it's the rest of the body that I'm trying to think of how to handle. So we'll do this first. We'll put the bars here. Then we'll say iron ingot, string iron ingot, and we'll do iron ingot, redstone iron ingot. That'll do well enough. And then I believe it's blocks dot iron bars, and then we'll do items dot to be honest, I'm making this an OR dictionary recipe, but I'm not actually using the OR dictionary system. I might come back here through later and do that. Right now it doesn't really matter. We just want to get a quick recipe. By the way, how this recipe system works is you go, okay, here's what I want to make. In this case, we're just passing in the item. The way you actually would do this for anything else is it would be new item stack. Then you would do the item, and in the item stack it'll be stack size and then metadata. So we'll go ahead and do that. Just as an example, and plus if I decide to come through here later and I have different details, then we want to handle that. And then how the recipe works is this is your top of your grid, middle of your grid, bottom of your grid. If you want to do a 2x2 grid, you would do only 2 wide and 2 tall. In this case, it's a 3x3 grid. You put characters in here, and then you define what the characters actually mean. So a little bit of a weird recipe system from what I've seen, but it does work rather well. I've tried to make alternatives to it. Every alternative I've made does not really handle any better. Although I do have a JSON system I am working on, which will end up replacing all the recipes and all my mods with a JSON file. For those who don't know what JSON files are, if I can go ahead and find an example real quick. This is a JSON file. Just really quickly, text file with layout defining what you want to do. Recipes will still use this literally the same format here, but then they'll be moved over to JSON. That way you don't have to code. And this will let other people come in. Say if you're a modpack developer and you want to change this recipe, instead of going and grabbing something like, I think it's called Recipe Tweaker, you can just modify the JSON files, and it works out rather well. Anyways, in order to get those changes, I'm going to have to restart Minecraft. Yeah, we'll go ahead and launch Minecraft. And there's one last thing I need to do, and then I'm basically done with this mod for today at least. And then I can go ahead and build a version, go give it to people to test around, and then we'll make a final version next week. And I will upload an experimental version here probably either today or tomorrow for people to toy with on Curse, but it won't be labeled as an actual project until next week. The last thing I need to do is I need to go over to the item hook render, and I need to tell the hook head to not render, which means I got to go look at the file real quick. If I can remember where to go here. So let's see, SMB, grappling hook. At least this is the hard way to do it, by the way. There is easier ways to do this. So, edit with Notepad. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of objects here. Okay, so that's going to be the hard way to do this. The easier way is I got to open Blender real quick. Yeah, let's get rid of this cube. Delete, yes. Okay, and we want to import waveform object, and we go and we can just grab this real quick, put this up in the bar, hit enter, and then we want to grab our grapple object here. So I know when things aren't scaled properly is when I load them into Blender and they're this massive. But this will give me my component list. So we have group 5, group 3, group 2, group 1, component 20, and component 15. So it's component 20 I want to de-render. Actually, there's a piece missing. Is that all everything? So if I tell 20 to de-render, okay. I'm looking for that little knob on the end there. Which one is that? Okay, so it's group 5 and component 20 is what I don't want to render. Okay, so when rendering the item, they do not give me the entity who's holding the item. That is, actually maybe it's in the object data. It might pass in the entity. We'll have to check that. But we know if we're equipped at first person, we know who we actually are. So how to handle this? So if we actually move up to here, so if this is tricky. Okay, so I know we're client side, so for rendering first person, of course, we must be the player. So if client hook handler dot hook does not equal null, we want to render something different. So we want to render else. So we want to render all except, and then we just pass in the name of these components. So this was group 5, and it may not exactly be that name. There may actually be a slight modification of the name, which we'll check here in like 2 seconds. But this will get us close enough. So that's component underscore 20. Component underscore 20. I completely misspelled that. If I actually, can I double click this? Aha, Control C. There we go, component 20. And that should give us, at least for the first person view, our hook will disappear when we have a hook enabled. And then we just got to do a little few tweaks here and there. And I may try to do an adjustment to the rope render, so that way when you have the grappling hook in your hand, it'll actually render from the grappling hook. But we'll tiptoe around that and see how we go as we go. And just to make sure, am I still recording? Yeah, I'm still recording. Yeah, after repeatedly accidentally hitting my hotkeys to disable recording, I've now removed the hotkeys, and I actually am now subconsciously checking to make sure we're still recording. I did this multiple times yesterday, but luckily yesterday I was only recording MechWarriors, so not too big of a deal, but I've done it twice now today, and it's a bit of an annoyance. So if we do this, haha, grappling hook is removed. And now just to check, I want to see what is actually contained in that object data. So we hit here. That data it does contain the player. So I should be able to actually handle this properly. So what we need to do is go entity player, and then we go if data does not equal null and data.length is greater than 2, and data dot, I believe it's 1. Let me hit debug. Yeah, value 1 is an instance of entity player. Actually, just instance of entity would make me happy. So if we actually do this real quick, and then we can go player equals data.1 cast, and we'll actually rename this quick to entity. That's actually not what I wanted to do IntelliJ, but okay. Okay, so we want to pre-default this to null as well, so we can go if entity does not equal null, we don't have hook data synced, but we can still code it real quick. There's one last thing I forgot to actually implement. We don't sync hook data at all. So what we could do, just to make this work really quick, if entity equals Minecraft dot this will allow us at least to fix the render in third person. And we just do this real quick, and then we just put this up here, and that'll fix our third person render view. I'm going to have to sync data to the client to get the hook to not render for other players. But this will at least fix our hook rendering for our current state. Actually, I didn't want to run that. Oh well. So now if we go to third person, and I fire the hook, it's not working. So now what we want to do is come down here, and we get to check the data, because something was weird. Entity is still null. So if data doesn't equal null and length is greater than equal to 2. Okay, derp. So we'll hit play again, and that'll stop right there, and that should work. So if we follow it through, okay, cool, it's working. So the only thing I gotta do now is I gotta sync data to the client about other entities. Yeah, that looks nice. And then if I decide to feel really adventurous, I can re-tackle rendering the rope from the grappling hook again. That's going to take me a while to get fixed because, as you guys saw from previous videos, I toyed with that for quite a while. Couldn't get it to work just right, but hopefully with some reinvigorated enthusiasm, I can get it done because it would look so much nicer. But yeah, that works. So yeah, that's it for today. I'll go ahead and upload this video, and I'll upload the other one that cut off and put a note at the end that saying it got cut off.